Winston Churchill famously said to the British House of Commons on the 11th of November 1947, "Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time." Interestingly, the sentence before reads, "No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all wise." But actually, I believe he is wrong on this point. If you criticise democracy, you will find that many do consider it perfect and all wise. Democracy has a number of problems, and I'm going to list some of them here. Social and economic levelling, the spread of the idea of equality, the tyranny of the majority, the tyranny of the party system, who is really in charge, bribery of the electorate. Anyone can be a leader, even you. Democracy says that everyone is equal and that everyone should get to decide who governs them, but we do not have the democracy of ancient Greece, even though ours is inspired by it. We do not have direct democracy. Instead, we have representative democracy. We do not vote on issues or policies in most cases. In most cases, we vote for someone to represent us, to represent our views and our interests. We do not get to make many decisions ourselves. Instead, nearly all government decisions are made for us. In that respect, democracy is no different to any other political philosophy. Let's now look at each of the problems individually. Social and economic levelling. One man, one vote was how democracy was once described, and indeed it is presented as a good thing that each vote has exactly the same power, only one vote for each voter. What that means is that every wise man and every fool gets the same vote. Every informed voter and every ignorant voter gets the same vote. Every sober voter and every drunk voter gets the same vote. It's a massive force for social and economic levelling. The spread of the idea of equality. If each vote is exactly the same, then each vote is equal. That is how it's represented. But in practice, it doesn't quite work that way. For complex electoral reasons, some voters in some areas are much more important than others. For example, someone who always votes for the same party is rarely as important as a swinging voter, for it is rarely, really, the swinging voter who decides most elections, not the loyal voter. But of course, the idea that everyone is equal, that everyone is the same, is there at all times. That no matter who the voter is, they are like every other voter, no matter what divides them. The tyranny of the majority. This has been called the dictatorship of the 51%. If 51% of the electorate votes in favour of something, then it must be good. If they vote against it, it must be bad. This has a certain logic to it when it is an absolute majority. When you start to see such tiny victories, you do wonder at the logic at it. For example, in any US presidential election, only something like 30 to 40% of voters actually vote for the man who becomes president. Because voting isn't compulsory, it means that a minority gets to decide who becomes president, a tyranny of the minority. The tyranny of the party system. When modern democracy first came into being, each electorate voted for someone to represent them in Parliament, a local who would present their side of any argument. No parties existed as we know them. Only loose groupings of people that believed in more or less similar things, but there was little organisation or discipline. In the early 1800s, that started to change, and political parties as we would know them began to appear. They brought with them organisation, discipline, money, and agendas, something missing from earlier groups. It detached the local member of Parliament from his community and attached him to a new group based not on location, but on ideology. Over time, ideology and money replaced all other considerations. I'm not saying that earlier parliamentarians didn't have political beliefs or that they were above money. Neither of those things are true. But everything was tempered by their connection, and in most cases having to live after they retired from Parliament in their local community. Today, a parliamentarian, at least theoretically, doesn't even have to visit their electorate, let alone retire there. Today, the parties provide that support. What the party wants is much more important than what the electorate wants. Today, the electorate gets to pay for what the party wants. Who is really in charge? President Lincoln said, "By the people and for the people." But if the people are in charge, Why did they need a president? If the president is in charge, what are the people there for? In a democracy, who is in charge? Is it God, the head of state, the head of government, the parliament, the courts, the people? To answer this, the idea of the separation of powers came about. It's not a bad idea. In fact, I quite like it. But it still doesn't answer the question. Who's in charge? Bribery of the electorate. This is quite a big problem and getting bigger. If a politician gave you cash, you'd be more than likely outraged. Does he think he can bribe me? But the reality is that democracy is all about bribing people. Not individuals, but entire groups of people all at once. The best thing about bribery in a democracy is that it isn't the politicians' money, it's the voters' money. Higher wages, tax cuts, welfare are all great areas for bribery because it seems like it's being done for a good cause. Hey, maybe some good will be done. But often it's about making sure the right people get the right incentive to vote the right way. It makes democracy sound seedy. I wish I could say that it wasn't, but it is. And most people know it. It's why most people don't like politicians. They know there's something not quite right about them. Some have even worked out that much of the time they are bribing you with your own money. Anyone can be a leader, even you. This is the greatest of all the conceits of democracy, that you too can be in charge. Democracy is wonderful. Anyone can be Prime Minister or President. Of course, when you have a closer look at who does get the job, you find that they tend to have things in common with each other that stop you from ever getting the job. The idea that you can be in charge is an ego boost. It makes it feel like if I made a few small changes, I could be there too. The leader of my country and I are so alike. I could be him with a few small changes. But it's a lie. It takes quite a lot to become the leader. Dedication, ambition, ruthlessness, even skill. It's quite an exacting business, and most fall. But it's not always a case of survival of the fittest. It's often a case of everyone else tripped and I'm the only one left standing. But the idea that often in politics the leader is the most ruthless or the most dull, everyone interesting getting knocked out, is one we find a little uncomfortable thinking about. So with all the problems of democracy, should we replace it?